Hi everyone, welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I'm featuring an adorable stamp set that's on the retiring products list with Stampin' Up, and it's called Fairy Celebration. Here's the card we're going to be creating today. I'm going to give you lots of tips on the Stampin' Blends today, as well as some of those accessories that are going to highlight that image on this very simple card. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would love to encourage you to do so. Go ahead and click the subscribe button down below and make sure you click on that bell icon that's next to it. That will send you notifications of when I'm live here on YouTube, as well as when I upload a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. Here's a good close-up of the card we're going to be creating today. Isn't it cute? Great for a girl's birthday as well. Just simply change up the sentiment. It comes from the stamp set called Fairy Celebration. It is on the Stampin' Up's retirement list, which means it's only available through June 3rd, 2019, when we're going to introduce a brand new catalog and new products. You will be able to find this product in my online store at lisasstampstudio.com. I'm starting with a base of Pacific Point cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and fold that in half. Of course, you can score it if you prefer, and I'm going to use my bone folder for that nice crisp edge. I'm going to bring in a small piece of grid paper. This measures 7 by 7. These are intended for the Stampin' Up! Stamp positioning tool called the Stamparatus. And I love this size, specifically when I'm stamping with friends and table space is at a premium. We also offer these larger in an 18-inch pad. From that same stamp set, I've pulled out the small background here. It's some dots and some stars. And I'm going to use the coordinating ink pad, Pacific Point. The great thing about Stampin' Up! Products is the color coordination. Now, if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you're interested in receiving copies of the current catalogs, just leave me a comment below and I'll reply to get a hold of you to get your mailing address. I'm going to ink this up and I'm going to stamp it across the card base. Now keep in mind when you're working with these strong colors that they will produce several shades of tone. And you're going to see here how it gets lighter as I stamp it. So it's really a matter of preference on what shade that you want. I'm going to stamp off one layer here on my scratch paper that'll give me a little bit more subtle background as I stamp it across the diagonal on the card front. I'm going to ink that up and then I'm going to stamp off. I'm going to work here, like I said, on the diagonal. And the most important thing I can tell you is to turn your cardstock and not turn your hand. Make it super easy for yourself. You can also see here, I'm going to point this out, I got a little zealous. Do you see that line there? That's because I've pressed too hard in the ink pad and I've actually inked up that outside edge. Do you see it? So be very, very careful. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in just a little bit more just to add a little bit of depth here, concentrating mostly on those outside edges. And there we go. We did camouflage that pretty well. On these strong colors, I'm in the habit of stamping off as much excess ink on my grid paper as I can. That's going to keep my Stampin' Chamois or your Stampin' Scrub a lot cleaner, longer. I'm going to set the card base aside, and now I'm going to bring in a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp that fairy using Memento ink. Since I'm going to be using the Stampin' Blends, you want to make sure that you're using a water-based ink pad so that there is no interaction for bleeding. So I'll go ahead and now ink her up, and I'm going to stamp her here off to the side. Again, I'm stamping off my excess ink to keep my chamois clean. And while I have that black ink pad out, I'm going to come back over here to the card base and I'm going to stamp my greeting down here at the bottom. From that exact same stamp set, I've pulled out the words that say, "All it takes is love, trust, and a little bit of fairy dust." We'll go ahead and ink that up as well. I'm going to stamp that down here in the bottom right of my card base. On the excess area here off to the side, I'm going to do a little bit of die cutting. And I've chosen to use the Stitched Shapes Framelits. These framelit dies are wonderful because you're going to get circles, ovals, and squares, and they are stitched all the way around the perimeter of the shape. They come in staggering sizes, which makes them great for layering. I've already pulled out the size that I want. I've got my die cutting machine here. I'm a big fan of the magnetic platform to help hold those dies in place. It's certainly not required. Then I'll die cut that stitched circle on that side and we'll crank that through. We've got our fairy here, and because of the stitching, I like to run my finger through the inside just to pop it out, not to distort any of those beautiful stitch lines. On that circle, I'm going to do a little bit of stamping as well. I've got the Pacific Point ink still here, and I've got that same image that we stamped across the back edge of the card. And this time I'm going to stamp off several times because I want it even lighter. And I'm going to add just a little bit of stars to the background of this image. I'm going to set that circle aside. We'll come back to that. And I'm going to bring in that image of the fairy. Because we're using alcohol inks, regardless of the thick Whisper White cardstock, you're going to want to protect your work surface in case there's any bleeding. I'm going to start by coloring her arms, legs, and her neck. And the perfect color is this Ivory Stampin' Blends. You're going to find that these markers are dual-sided. There's a chisel tip and a brush tip. They are indicated by the lines here underneath the caps. And because that's a fine area, I'm going to go ahead and use the chisel tip. And I'm going to color in her arms and her legs. I want to give a little color to her hair as well. So I'm bringing in the bronze. This color is not only great for hair, but it's also wonderful for flesh tones. So I'll go ahead and add that in as well. I'm going to work on the wings next, and I chose to use the mint macaron. Now, the Stampin' Blends can be purchased individually or they can be purchased in a combo. There is no price difference, but it gives you the flexibility of replacing one marker before the other. The great thing about the two tones is you're going to often find by testing them on your scratch paper, you're going to be able to see if they coordinate with other light colors. So this is the light of the mint macaron, and this is the dark. And if you prefer one over the other, you can certainly color it in solid. We're going to do just a little bit of shading. This is a small area. Again, I'm going to work with that chisel tip, and I'm going to color in her wings. I'm switching over now to the darker shade. And I'm going to place this right along the outside edge. That's going to give me a little bit of definition. There's a slight border around these wings that it might be difficult to see in the video, but you can concentrate on that if you'd like. And I'm going to do a little bit down the center and up a couple of the veins in the wings. One of the great things about the blends is you're able to go back with the light color, and you can actually blend these together by just going back over it. And as the alcohol dries, you'll be able to see the depth. For her dress, we actually do not have a Pacific Point Stampin' Blends, but here's a great tip for you. Because of those light and dark shades, I actually did a little bit of experimenting, and I found out that the Night of Navy in the light tone actually matched very well. You can see here that I've actually scribbled it near the ink pad, and it's almost identical. I'm going to come in now and I'm going to add a little color here around her neckline, and then I'll color in the areas of her dress. The Stampin' Blends provide flawless coverage. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut this image out. There is no die for it. I'm going to give you some tips along the way. The most important thing I can tell you is to leave a little bit of cardstock around your image. So don't cut right on top of those stamped lines. Here's that stitched circle that we had used previously. I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to bring in my mini dimensionals. Those are going to fit really well on that small image. Using one near the top of her head, I want to make sure that it's going to fit within the parameters of my cutout image. And if it doesn't, I'm going to give you a tip about that. Then we'll take off those paper backings. I'm turning it over and I'm looking from the front, and I want to make sure that the dimensional isn't visible. If it is, take your scissors and give it a little bit of a trim. I'm going to turn this just a little bit just to kind of decide how I want this to be situated. And I think I'll put her here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add some metallic thread to this image. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to switch over now to my full-size dimensionals. I'm going to line those across the back. I'm going to use 4. I'm going to take off the paper backing to ready this paper for the thread. It'll be a lot easier not to try to do everything at once. I've got my metallic thread here. This is the silver. It is being carried over into the new catalog. And you might be wondering what this little thing on the top is that's blue. This is a small piece of poster tack. Teachers typically use this in their classrooms to hold posters and wording to the wall because it doesn't mar the surface, and it works great for holding that loose end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of this off, and I'm going to use my hand as a gauge. So I'm starting here at the bottom with the loose end, and I'm going to wrap it around several times. And you can do as much or as little as you'd like. And once I'm satisfied, I'll give that a little bit of a tug. And listen, if they're not even, don't worry about that. We want this to look real whimsical. I'm going to cut off the other raw end, and I'm going to situate that across those dimensionals. We're looking for a messy look. We want to bring a little bit of credence to those stars and that fairy. And then here at the card base, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this over to the left-hand side, making sure I don't cover up that greeting. I'm going to give those little raw ends a haircut. They're a little bit too long for my liking. And then now what I want to do is I want to embellish this. I'm going to do a mixture. I'm going to use these beautiful Twinkle embellishments. They already have glue dots on the back, which makes them really easy to use. They come in a sheet of silver as well as iridescent. They are on the retiring products list. They were available at the filming of this video, so please head over to my online store just to make sure. To help use those, I'm going to use my Take Your Pick pickup tool. Fabulous product. It is not in the current publication since it's fairly new. It will be in the new catalog. There are protective caps that go on both sides. That makes it great for transporting it. This end is sticky, which is going to help you pick up loose sequins and small pieces of paper. It also comes with a putty refill that screws right on. This end has an interchangeable tip. You can turn it and remove it. You've got a great spatula there if you've got to loosen up those adhesives and move them. It also has a paper piercing tool on this end, which is going to help me with these since they already have glue dots on the back. It also comes with an interchangeable double-sided stylus tool. For $10, I absolutely love this product. I'm going to come up underneath my star and I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to place one of those stars up here near the top, and I'll take the second one. I'm going to place that down here near the greeting. I also decided to mix in some sequins. This is the metallic sequin assortment. Again, these were available at the filming of this video, but go over and check in my online store. Love these, gold, silver, copper, and iridescent, as well as the black. I've pulled out a few just before you joined me, and you can see I'm using my pickup tool to lift those. So I'm going to place one of them here, and I'll place the other one down here. I like to position them on my cardstock first before I start gluing them. I'm going to be using the fine tip glue to adhere them to the cardstock. It has a needled tip on the end that's going to keep it from drying out. What I recommend is you take your scratch paper and give this a little bit of a tap just to see that the glue is flowing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pickup tool to lift up that sequin, and I'm going to dab a little glue, and then I'll place the sequin right on top. And then I'll do the same thing here on this side. There we go. We have our finished card. This is the one we made together today. I used the Stampin' Blends. The one in the photograph that you're looking at over on my website is actually going to be using the Pacific Point marker. I don't know if you can tell or not, but can you see the difference in the coloring? The Stampin' Blends card is flawless, which means you don't have any streaking from the marker. Have you tried the Stampin' Blends alcohol markers? Leave me a comment below. If you've enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up. That's a like here on YouTube. It makes them and I both very happy. Thanks so much for joining me today, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.